Welcome to the Sparky Coach podcast. This platform was built by Sparkies for Sparkies. We simply exist to make business owners more profitable, or businesses more profitable and more predictable. So we want to work with people that work hard because we love working hard too, that work smart because you got to be on top of the business, people that are kind because no one likes a dickhead. Am I right? People who want results because that's what we're here for, right? And people who want to be part of a like-minded community. So if you're interested in hearing more about the platform, please reach out and enjoy the podcast. What's happening, Sparky Coach Pod? The big dog's back in the house. Woof.
Woof, woof, woof. What is going on?
How funny is that? That guy was at Current Affair when he's going, the dog was like, oh, you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's his old guy
impersonating the dog, though.
Impersonating the dog. It's actually insane. If that sounded like I cracked a beer, I didn't. I cracked a coconut water, but both good things. There's no judgment here, although it is 10:16 a.m. So I'm relatively thankful it's a coconut water. All right, question from someone came in. We did a forecasting session, forecasting podcast, sorry, a couple of weeks ago, probably to date here, and sort of planning the rest of your week, your year out, because it is sort of September. Welcome to spring. So it's September now, so there's not really that many weeks left in the year, so plan it out. And it kind of came out, a few people just sort of discussing the topic, when is enough on the forecast? So it's like, when do you sort of put the bar plug in and let the water, like, just like stop? Like, when do you stop taking on more work? And this is a very, very, very interesting question. One that I'm going to say is like Lamb Chops Play Along. Do you remember Lamb Chops Play Along? It's got this like this song that doesn't end. It had this is the song that doesn't end, and it went around. Like it just never ended.
Yeah,
like it just never ended. That was my childhood Lamb Chops. It's pretty weird, to be honest, that show. But coming out to, it's like it didn't actually have an end. It didn't have an end. That song didn't have an end, and this question doesn't actually have an answer. Anyone that tells you this has an answer is lying. so it doesn't have an answer. But like, it's super interesting because I think my head always goes to, and we say this a lot, say yes and figure it out later. Say yes, figure it out later, which is actually very easy to say from a chair with a coconut water in your hand. It gets easier. The older I get and the more chairs I sit in, the easier this gets to say. But I remember getting phone calls and being like, yeah, we'll be there. Yeah, sweet. Yeah. And as much as you can try and wrangle a schedule, you're in the service industry. And we used to work for a couple of like, not hotel chains, but builders or whatever you call them. Like, they weren't builders, but clients that specialize in the hotel renovation space. So they might just get the green light to go to a hotel and do 300 rooms or 200 rooms or 100 rooms. And then we get called and be like, we need you here tomorrow. And I'm like, of course, yeah, it's CC. And lots of times we were wrangling that, you know, and that was really, really interesting to be like, yeah, and then figure it out. And I think flashing back to it, living in a city, like, my gosh, you got so much more access to people. So it really depends on where you're based. If you're based in and around millions of people, you got access to probably a whole bunch of other companies or subcontractors. Or if you've got a big team, if you've got a team of 10 or 20 or 30 or 40, and they can all work 10 hours overtime a week, huge play. So a couple of factors at play here. But I mean, I like the say yes, figure it out later. I feel like you will always figure it out. But I want to come back to it. But what does your head go to with the forecasting, and at what point do you sort of close the books?
Well, so first and foremost, I got a bit of so there's an element of say yes, figure out later. And I think therein lies part of the question around like, when's enough is you've said yes, you've still got time to figure it out later, so to speak. So you can still say no. So this could be, I think obviously when you've got a client who's like, hey, we need you here tomorrow for the job. If you've got the client who's like, hey, we've got these jobs coming up, or hey, could you have a look? Would you be interested in quoting this type of work? You can say yes and have a look at it. and then say no still. So like I've always looked at say yes, figure out later is it's actually buying you time. So that it's how you utilize that time. So you've not committed in most instances. You're not 100% committed on a job front. Yeah, you've sort of committed, obviously, but in a incoming work or like hey opportunity front, which because there's multiple layers to look at here, is that when you've got an opportunity, yeah, let's have a look at it. And you're like, actually, maybe that's not quite for us because you've been able to buy the time to have a look and run over it and see where you're sitting in that in your sense of forecasting out. And I think this is why it's really important. I know we talked about the other day. The first and foremost is know what's going on. Like what's happening, what jobs are on the horizon, what work fronts you need to be at, what time frames are associated with it. And I think if you don't know how long you need to be at job X for the cutout, for the fit off, for the rough in, I think that's a red flag that you need to identify and be like, we probably haven't front costed this job well enough to have an understanding of how many days are required. And I mean like not like straight off the head as in like, oh, it's going to be 3.4 days for six. It could be like look somewhere, dive into it and get an answer back within, a couple of hours potentially. But if you're genuinely like, I have no idea and I wouldn't even know where to look to find that information, I think you need to understand that maybe something needs to be done in that particular sense because the forecasting is really important to have an understanding. Sit back, relax, grab yourself a coconut water and see what's on the horizon because you could already have enough and you could be filled with enough workload for your circumstances. And now this is probably where I want to think, or I think I want to go with this and my thoughts around it is this is so subjective, right? So when is enough is going to be up to the individual business owner of what they're purely comfortable with and what they're going through at that particular time. Now, you could be expecting a newborn in your family, so a child, for example, or you could have young children and there's constraints on your time, or there may be I guess, desire to spend certain amounts of time with them or do certain things with them or support your partner in a way that's going to constrain the amount of time that you're available to dedicate to work. The thing I always look at and think at around, hey, what are the two sort of, I guess, tick boxes or levers that you're looking at is obviously first and foremost is, are we making money? Are we making the money that we're, I guess, wanting to achieve? And that again is going to be up to every individual because it's to do with location, influences on lifestyle, all those sorts of bits and pieces. There's that part. And then the second part is like, are we doing what we want to be doing? And what I mean by that is like the time. So like, what am I doing with my time? Am I getting the things done outside that I want to be doing? A lot of people tie this to freedom. I just tie it to choice. I'll be honest, I don't really like the word freedom because it doesn't, I feel like it gives the connotation that it's not quite there. I think it's choice is what I like to look at. So if you're ticking those boxes, then maybe you've answered the question around is enough? So like, do you actually need to take on more? Do you need to put yourself under a pressure that you don't want to put yourself under? Is it going to require more labor, more staff, more investment? Those sorts of bits and pieces. There's no like one answer that you can apply to here. It's lots of things that come into it, come into play and have influences associated around it. That's sort of my thought around what is or when is enough is that I think you need to step back and be like, they're the two key factors for me. And I don't think anyone should be influenced by others in this. I think it's in an individual decision. There's no, I guess probably what I'm trying to say there is there's no criteria or sort of graph that's like, oh, when you get to here, this is what happens. It's an individual thing because the money part of it is purely up to you. And then the choice part is purely up to you as well. You might be happy to, hey, I'm happy to do 6 days a week. because that's what you do. The hours may vary in that time. It could be like, no, I only want to do 4 hours a week now. And it's subjective within that to lie and get the outcome that you're looking for. But they're probably the two key influences on me that I want to look at when you're like, is enough enough?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I always feel like maybe the only thing that the most important thing is that the product stays really good. That's incredibly important for retention of clients. There's no point doing a job for a great client and making lots of money if we don't get their repeat work, and there's no point doing a job for a client and losing money. But the product has to remain good. So it's like, do you have access to the people that are delivering that product, which is essentially labor and materials? And you maybe you can jump back on, but you're only sort of one person or whatever. So I feel like the problem of I think we all agree with that. The product has to remain great to excellent. It has to remain to code, and it has to be delivered on time, on budget, above expectation. Like that's can you do that? That's you almost call that your reputation at stake, So that's huge. The drama in business is when you have two good clients, two excellent clients, and they both want you there on the same day. That's business growth 101. Or you got 10 good clients and they all want you there in the same week. That's how you grow a business. You get a good client that wants to use you again and again and again, and they tell their friends, and you advertise and they use you, and they tell their friends and they tell their friends, and maybe you didn't have to advertise, and that's fantastic, whatever. But essentially you got to get to a point in business where you can't be in two places at once. And you got to get to a point in business where your team can't be in two places at once, or your admin team can't be in two places at once. So this is where it's so important to close the week and gain some context on where you're at. Like, if you need to spend an hour or two every single week just working out where you're at workload wise and what the schedule is happening, that's potentially the greatest use of anyone's time ever, because you're not going to let your clients down. And let's face it, the on-site product is fantastic, but the off-site product is on par with the on-site product. You can be delivering the sickest switchboard, it's stainless steel, and check out I've wired everything perfectly, and that's great. And look how neat it is, cool. But if you didn't show up on time, or you didn't communicate to the client that the shutdown was on Wednesday, not Thursday, doesn't matter how good your switchboard is, because you've cooked it, right? So now the client's annoyed, not because of your on-site work, because of your lack of structure, organization, process, systems, whatever. So the two have to match up. So the delivered product is everything from the initial phone call or the 10th phone call or the 100th phone call right until the end of the job, right until the next job. The product is as important on-site as off-site, but there's no, arguably speaking, more importantly off-site, because there's thousands upon thousands upon thousands who can deliver a neat switchboard. But can you answer the phone? Like, can you step up under stress? Can you step up under fatigue? Can you step up? Can you push through? Can you deliver the product off-site and on-site consistently across decades? That we're not in like a sprint. And this is what concerns me with all like the off the tools in 12 months and all the sort of deadlines that aren't really a deadline at all. It's like you put in these false deadlines. You're overcooking what you can do in 1 year and undercooking what you can do in 20. So if we're in a sprint, let's sprint, but we're not in a sprint. You're probably going to be running this business in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, or you want to have sold it in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, or you want to pass it down generationally in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time. Whatever you want to do, you want to have the choice, but you can't sell a non-profitable business. You definitely don't want your child to take over a family business that's not profitable. That's like you wouldn't wish that upon anyone, right? Hey, take over my family business. We don't make much money. Actually, we don't do anything really good. Like that sucks. So it's like product has to remain good. So clients. And then you look at it being like, am I trying to be too busy with the wrong client? So it's like, you look at margins and all that kind of stuff. And I was having a chat with a friend yesterday, I think. It might have been at the beach, can't remember. And it was I was sort of saying, he's like, what are you looking for in an electrical business? You're looking for the small stuff or the big stuff? And this is a finance guy. And I was like, it's interesting because The big stuff, you're probably making less margin, but you've got consistency and confidence to hire. You've got workload to fill. You've got labor efficiency, and you got a decent to good margin, right? It's probably not going to blow you out of the park. It could, but more than likely it's going to be in that 15 to 20% range. The smaller stuff we can be in and out of in an hour to 2 weeks to a month, whatever. The smaller stuff is probably going to fill your cup with 20, 30, 40% margins. And you need both the profitability of the small stuff and the consistency of the larger stuff. And then you've got large clients giving you small profitable work, and the circle runs itself, right? You're a cafe. Sometimes people want coffees. Sometimes they want coffees with 4 cheese toasties. So it's like you're in the service industry. You have to deliver what you can deliver. So clients are interesting because it's like, are you putting yourself out for the wrong person? So this is what you see a lot. You see people get an opportunity to grow the business, right? They get a client come knocking and they're like, oh, sweet. So they spend 5 days quoting this job. They price it for no profit and they've let all their existing good clients down. That's huge because that comes sort of like everything I'm going to mention here is tying back to like, can your product remain good? So that everything I'm going to say is going to, so can your product remain good? So clients, are you prioritizing the right clients? If you've got a whole bunch of the right clients and you're busy for 2 years, you might want to shut books because it's like, well, we don't really need anything else. And then you ask yourself, have I got access to capacity? Now, extra staff, extra subcontractors are fantastic, but if they're going to let the product down, is it really worth it? You're better off saying no, right? And because your product won't remain good. So it's like if you live in a city, you've probably got access to a whole bunch of subcontractors and come in that can keep the product high. I still feel like the best use of subcontractors is full-time, like if you can, but also they need to, if they're not full-time, so aka they're an employee, they need to be under some of your team. So it's like you're one of your team or 2 of your teams running the job and the subbies slot in down the pyramid scheme, down the food chain and just do. So, hey, we need this roughed into this plan. I need this fit off to this plan. I need this board fit off. Perfect. Like a start and finish job they can clock in and clock out almost like just a punter employee. That's how you want to use them, in my opinion. So subcontracting, do you have access to labor? Clear dates on projects. So to timestamp this, like I said before, September, spring. So we've all had those clients that are like, we're in before Christmas. And you look and it's like, there's no roof. Okay, the chance of us being in before Christmas is slim to low to definitely not. And more than likely, definitely not. So if you look at the forecasted timeline of that and you've got 4 weeks leading up to Christmas, you sort of know that's not going to happen. You know, the danger is Christmas is I still think it's interesting. It's the only deadline you have in the whole year. There's no other deadline. Christmas is the only deadline where it's like, stop traffic, everyone's gone away for 2 weeks. So that's huge. Well, we should.
And the reality is, as soon as that day comes, it's like, okay, there's no more. It's like everyone just goes,
yeah, cool. It's going to have some.
Oh, we didn't finish. Oh, whoops.
Yeah, that's all good. Just we'll see you Jan 7, Jan 10, whatever. It was so funny. So clear date. So if you've got a job booked in before Christmas that you sort of know it's not going to get there, you can the older you are, the longer you've been around, the more you can, predict that, I guess you would say. But this is where good relationships with the builder comes into it. Commercial client, whatever. Hey, do you really reckon you're going to get that in before that point? Nah. But don't tell anyone. Cool. I won't tell anyone, but I need to know for my forecast, right? So if you've got 4 weeks work that needs to be done that's not in there, problem. If you've got 4 weeks of work that's in there but doesn't need to be done till Jan, you can gain so many clients in that November, December season by being available when other people aren't available. Huge. Variations. We all know there's going to be variations on the job. So if you think you're busy, chances are you're very, very busy, right? If you panned it out on a whiteboard, you're not including the work that's going to come up. You're not including any variations on the current work you've got. And you're not including the clients that call you every single week and the emergency stuff that comes up. So chances are if you're busy on a whiteboard until Christmas, you're really busy. That's a huge. So this is why reflecting weekly. Can you hire? Can you put more staff on the ground? Can you get apprentices on? And this is where the training of apprentices, if you're busy, this is the benefit of project work that no one talks about is like consistency of work in the one spot where someone can learn a whole bunch of stuff. So the ability to put apprentices on, which if you can put an apprentice on and keep them billable, you'll lower your overhead and you'll train weapons if you can put them under weapon tradies. So, and then you're a self-fulfilling prophecy. You sort of like your own ecosystem. You keep producing where people can't, how do I find a tradie? How do I find a tradie? Cool, produce them. You know, like if you can't find one, you might need to produce one. Producing one is much easier when you've got long-term work from great clients that, you know, and good, consistent sort of workflow, labor efficiency. Absolutely huge. So that comes into it. And like you said before, profitability, which kind of ties into product. Like there's no point providing an excellent product if it's not profitable. And there's no point being profitable if the product's not awesome. Really on site, because the people just won't use you. The people that used to pay you won't pay you again. So I think that's my sort of like, there's no answer.
No.
It's like proximity to people is huge, but you have to just have that goal. The product has to remain good, because as much as if you've got those 10 clients that say, hey, we need you to get this whatever insert job here done before Christmas, and they're all your good clients, and you've got good relationships with all of them, you're going to have to say yes and figure that out later, because you don't want to let them down because you've worked with them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and you've been to their son's bat mitzvah. Is that still a thing? I've never been to a bat mitzvah.
I haven't, but yes, it's still a thing.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's a thing, but I've never been to this so-called thing. It always makes me think of Starsky and Hutch, the bar mitzvah. There's funny times. So anyway, I was just ranted.
No, I think it's all relative there. So there's because I look at it there in the sense that there's the personal. So there's going to be a personal desire, personal, I guess, validation to a point that's associated with it. Then there's the business decision side of it. That okay, and they, regardless of whether you like it or not, they are interlinked. But ultimately, the decisions that we're making, is either of those going to be affected? Is our personal aspirations or the business aspirations going to be affected? And if it's going to be affected negatively, it's obviously a concern. I think it needs to be a considered outcome in that. Probably the one thing that I do want to sort of touch on here is the linear growth that you have with people on journeys. So when you start out with someone, as their business grows, you naturally grow with them in that particular sense. So there's always that to keep into consideration, that they also may pivot, weave, dodge, change direction, and then eventually find out their sort of where they want what pool they want to swim in, so to speak. I think here, though, I probably just want to reference that if you continually say yes, but under-deliver or cause issues, or it's not the desired outcome, and I'm going to say it can be just a small blip. It could be like a 20% drop in the delivery or the product, is that those linear growth opportunities you have with clients, they're done and dusted. So then you have to start again with someone else. And it's not to say that you're a bad person or, not good at your job or things like that. It can be as
you're terrible.
It can be as simple as, hey, we made a bad hire, or some bad hires when we were under pressure. We may have put people in charge of jobs when it wasn't the right thing to do. And so I just want to reference that there real quickly, as in that, so they're not actually a bad hire or a bad person, probably even a good Sparky, is that they probably weren't the right person, or they definitely weren't the right person to put on the job. And I think when you reference back to it, what happens is you got spread too thin. You tried it to be everywhere at once, and then in turn you are actually nowhere. And I think that's really important to reference and understand that, like, sometimes you're better off having four or six people, because you've got like really good team members, but really good one leader, putting them and getting more smashed out and communicating better, in the sense of like, hey, we're going to go here for 2 days and get it done. Then we're going to jump onto your job and get it done. So you may have given us a week to do it. We don't actually need a week anymore. We'll get it done in 3 days because we've got more people at it, so to speak, or 2 days. So I think referencing that and understanding the effect that can occur on your business can be lasting as well by making that poor decision of committing to something or committing to things that were beyond your control. And like you said, like you've got to have an understanding of what we want out of this personally and what you want out of it professionally in the business sense. And are they being ticked off, so to speak? Like, is the cup being filled in the way that we want it to be? And if it's not working out, well, then I can tell you right now, either way that occurs, it'll drop off. So I think that just needs to be considered and taken into account, and forecasting. So you just need to understand, have the relationship, put the effort in, and put the time in. And if you don't know, that's a concern. You need to know.
Yeah, and this is. I'll wrap it here, but I think you could probably pod about this in a month's time and have like a different context or take on it, because you've got to think about it a bit more. But essentially, it's an opportunity. Everything's an opportunity cost. So if I do that, does it not enable me to do this? So if I take on that job for 10% net profit that I'm a bit concerned about, and it goes for 18 months, that might take your best person out, or you out, or someone out for 18 months. So it's like there's always an opportunity cost out there. Now, what you've also got is supply and demand. So if you're in demand dramatically, you can probably increase your prices. So if you've got lots of stuff happening, you'll be able to sort of be, okay, sweet. Well, like I don't really, the best position to be in is when you don't need it, because it's like, well, I'll price here and see what happens. And while you don't want to upset the apple cart of an excellent client, there's probably like a realm and reason of like a market. Maybe you can push just north of the market, like just like, oh, that's what you're obviously providing, doing something good. And this is where it's interesting. If you've got 15 to 20 staff, it's very different to 2 to 3 staff. If you've got 2 to 3 staff, you might want to keep it within a market because your goal is to grow the business. If you've got 15 to 20 and you sort of close the book staff wise a little bit, you got access to subcontractors, you might be able to push the needle up on the sub 20 grand jobs or other work. So you got plenty of options in there, but I would just be like, you want to basically, what do you want out of business? You probably want a good reputation. You want to keep providing an excellent service. So your product on-site and off-site is really good. You want long-term staff and you want long-term clients. Mm-hmm. And you want, with those long-term clients, you want the right kind of client that's going to keep putting work, they're going to keep basically filling your cup. That's the goal. So does it tick those boxes or not? And I think if it doesn't, that's cool. Not every opportunity is from the trade gods. And if it does, that's good. Sometimes every opportunity is from the trade gods. They work in mysterious ways. They are incredibly difficult to read and understand sometimes. But yeah, that's my sort of wrap up 2 cents. So we didn't answer anything. We just talked around your question. You know who you are, who asked that question. We talked around it for like half an hour. So hopefully you got something out of this, and you don't have to do anything. That's my wrap up.
No, I think it's what I think it needs to be considered. So all things need to be considered to be able to get to the outcome you're looking for or decision you want to make. And I think how you get there is by having information fed into you. So you've got some data to reflect on, and you've got got the ability to make an informed decision. I think that's what you want to be doing. You want to be informed. So you need to consider different areas of the business, different pieces of information, then make an informed decision. And then just got to live with that at the end of the day to roll with it all. But as always, it's been a pleasure.
Peace. That's a wrap on another podcast. Whatever you're doing, don't be too busy to stop and check if you're making money. And above all else, you know the rules. Be kind. See you soon.